This one was something that I actually really wanted to do in the early days of Growth in Reverse, and I didn't do it. So feel free to steal this for whoever's listening. I don't often have a ton of time for this, which is probably not the best strategy, but I will try and quickly write out 5 or 10 different angles that this piece could take.
Just have one thing somebody can do on that page. Watch your conversions increase. I think it's that simple.
The Google overlords want to see you and your readers engaging with each other. That's another thing you can set up once, and people will get that warm, fuzzy feeling every time they subscribe to your newsletter.
This takes a little bit of upfront work and thinking, but once you've got this set, this is where you can really stand out.
Welcome back to the Growth in Reverse podcast. I'm Chenell.
And I'm Dylan.
And today we're going to talk about some of the easy changes that you can make that can have a big impact on your growth and just your retention of your subscribers. This topic actually came from someone on LinkedIn. Jake Carroll sent over this idea. Jake has a newsletter called Good Fortune Labs, and you can find that at goodfortunelabs.com, where he breaks down strategies and insights behind impact businesses and the founders who built them. And Jake actually said, you do a lot of these episodes about mistakes and some of the cool ways people grow, but are there different things that you can do, like smaller changes you can make that have a big impact? So I said, Dylan, I think this is a good challenge. Let's do this episode.
I think it is.
Yeah. So we put together some notes, and then we're just going to kind of riff on some things as well. And I'm excited to jump into this. We're going to kind of break this up into a couple parts. So we'll talk about onboarding, things like your welcome email, etc. Then we'll talk about some growth stuff, and then revenue, because everyone wants to make some more money.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to talk about retention and engagement. And there might be a couple bonus ones at the end. So stay tuned.
Ooh, love that teaser. Bonus tips. Stay tuned.
All right. So let's jump into onboarding. We talked first about having a good minimalist landing page for your newsletter.
Yeah.
This is something I saw through Drew Riley with Trends VC, and I pretty much copied his homepage and stole it, and it still is the same. I'll probably change it up a little bit, but I think there is something to be said about just having one box for the email address, and that's all you can do on that page is sign up.
I think the easy change here is just deleting your nav menu. You can still host it on your website, but just delete your navigation menu, just have one thing somebody can do on that page and watch your conversions increase. I think it's that simple.
And Drew, actually, in the deep dive I wrote on him, he had 17 iterations of the homepage, and most of them were changing around different elements. But the whole time he essentially left the form as just email address, button to subscribe. That's it.
I mean, it's that simple, and it's not. Of course, you want to, leverage copywriting and make sure people know what your newsletter is about and all that stuff. Have all those elements buttoned down, but just make it super focused and not. Don't give your subscribers any distractions. Make it really obvious what they need to do and how to get access to your newsletter.
Yeah. And so with his, I know he said it converted at 40 to 50%. So I think that's a pretty good benchmark if you can get it up there.
That's pretty,
especially
that's
if it's, yeah. So I say anything above 30, 35% for a page like that is doing pretty well. All right. What do you think next?
Well, I think, so once you've got somebody to subscribe, there's a few places, a few things they can do, or a few options that you can have. One of the things I've seen, a mistake I've seen, I know we weren't supposed to talk about mistakes, but one thing I see people make the mistake of is just a default success. You have been subscribed, just a default message. And then there's nothing else for them to do, especially if they're on one of these minimalist landing pages. It's kind of a dead end, right? So you want to drive people to an almost there page or a thank you page. Let's talk through an almost there page. One of the reasons why I think it's pretty important to have an almost there page is really because it signifies that you are making progress towards being a subscriber to this newsletter. And it can really give you the opportunity to drive people to their inbox saying almost there, just got to do this one step. You see this oftentimes with double opt-in newsletters who have turned double opt-in on. So they need to confirm their email address to actually get on your email list. But you could even do this for, if you don't have a double opt-in turned on, you can drive subscribers to their inboxes to engage with your welcome email that you're sending them by having an almost there page. So it's kind of I'd say almost like a decoy page to some degree, a decoy thank you page, just really driving people to take that next step.
And the guys over at growth.design have a really good example of this. It's just a little animated caricature of one of them, and it says go check your Gmail inbox. And I
Yeah.
actually kind of snagged that template for mine as well. So there's a link for, if somebody is using Gmail, they can click on that. It goes directly to the inbox. It focuses their inbox on only getting emails from Chenell at growthandreverse.com. Kind of removes all the noise. It makes it more likely that someone's going to open that first email from you as well.
Hmm.
And they call that like a sniper link, I think was the term.
Yeah. Yeah. That was it.
Yeah, those guys are super smart with that stuff. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, if you want to do a thank you page instead and you're not doing double opt-in, that's fine as well. And I know you had a good example recently of one of these. So why don't you
Yeah.
tell us about that?
And I'll just give a shout too. If you are not watching this on YouTube, check it out on YouTube because we'll throw examples of these on the screen too. So make sure you check that out,
Yeah.
including that growth design one. So in terms of thank you pages, one thing I saw recently was, again, this is a thank you page is another opportunity, right? You've got a subscriber, they've just subscribed, they're essentially fully engaged to, hearing from you what you have to offer. And oftentimes, and I'm guilty of making this mistake too, your thank you page is like, thanks for subscribing. Go check your inbox. Like that's fine and that's good, but it's not really spurring anybody on to do anything. And I think what you can do is really there's an opportunity to upsell here. There's an opportunity to make sure they follow you on social media, on the channels you're actually active on. And one thing that I saw Mark Manson do actually recently, I subscribed to his newsletter, and he had a great double opt-in email. I clicked on his opt-in button in his email, and then I got taken to his subscribed page, and is essentially a thank you page. And he said, "Thanks for subscribing. I think this newsletter has the opportunity to change your life. Follow me on all these social platforms. And then, if you really want to have an impact on your life, or have my newsletter have an impact on your life, check out all of these great features and these benefits from my pro membership, essentially, or my basically his upsell tier." And so he listed us all of these bullet points, what you get when you subscribe to his basically his paid subscription for his newsletter, and then he's got a price at the bottom saying it only $667 I think per month to basically get all that. So I thought that was a really great way that he used his thank you page to upsell and drive some revenue for himself as well.
Yeah. And I think the thank you page, the welcome email, these are things that so many people just like overlook. I've done so many newsletter audits where it's just like the default option that either Kit or Beehive sets you up with, and it just doesn't leave someone excited about what they just joined.
No.
So if you can really stand out if you take the time and like customize these a bit, maybe throw your face up on a couple of them,
Hmm.
just kind of show the people that you care about this whole newsletter thing and that you're
Yeah.
taking this seriously.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it gives you a chance for even to get people down, like get the rabbit hole, go down the rabbit hole of your content, or binge your content. I think Jay Klaus has really tried to optimize this as well with his website to make like a binge page. So there's lots of ways you can do this, but the point is don't just leave people kind of at this boring dead end thank you page.
Definitely. So the next one that we want to talk about is the welcome email. I've seen a lot of good welcome emails in my day, but I came across one recently that was just so good. I'm writing a deep dive on CJ from Mostly Metrics, and I signed up for his paid newsletter just so I could, do the research and see like what's behind there. And the welcome email in this is just amazing. So he themes it like Breaking Bad.
Ooh.
And so the subject line is "Thank you for Breaking Bad and going paid." And then the first headline says "Let's cook," and it's like a picture of the two guys from that show.
Oh.
Um, and
Did you
it
get the
says, "Me and my
trademark
dog writing
license?
this newsletter." I don't know, probably not. That's okay. And then he says, like, "This is where all the dope stuff will live. The free subscribers, well, they'll just get the Snickle Fritz." And then like it's just like goes on and on. He's just showcasing his personality in this. And then at
Hmm.
the bottom, like throughout his content, from what I've seen, and he talks about on his podcast, he's a big Miller Lite fan.
Like the beer? Okay.
Yeah. So at the bottom it says "Cheers" and "More to come," and then it has like a GIF of like a Miller Lite can flying across the table, and it says "Cheers, it's metrics time," because that's his whole thing is like Mostly Metrics. It's the name of the
Right.
newsletter.
Right.
I was just like, it's so good. It's so customized to him. It's like showcasing he spent time, he has a good personality, and he can like convey that in his content.
And again, this is a lot, like this takes a little bit of upfront work and thinking, but once you've got this set, this is
Yeah.
where you can really stand out. And I think this does, people might be listening to this and think, oh, that's a lot of work to figure that out. But this is email that goes to everyone, right? Spend a little bit extra
Mhm.
time and the payoff is just so much bigger.
That was one of the better ones I've seen lately, and it's stuck in my head because it's so good.
That's good. I'm definitely
Yeah.
going to have to subscribe and experience that the metrics time.
So funny.
Oh, that's good. I think the to kind of follow suit with that a little bit, like surprise and delight is a big thing that I think people can leverage in welcome emails. I know we've talked about Caitlin Burgoyne a lot with this. She has a great reply and I'll send you a free gift sort of thing. Other people have just said basically here is a free gift. It's kind of like the reverse lead magnet. You subscribed and now you're getting like an added resource. And I think that's
Mhm.
one way you can really prove some trust and credibility to your audience. They're gonna like you for it. They're gonna trust that you're gonna keep providing them with great content. So it really sets you up on the right foot. And it doesn't take much. Most of us have some kind of resource that we can share or access to something in that first email. And so I think there's an opportunity there to really surprise and delight people too.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think the other thing people kind of skip is asking for a reply.
Hmm.
I mean, this is just the Google overlords want to see you and your readers engaging with each other. If it's just one-way emails the whole time, it's potentially going to not go to the inbox every time. But if you can get someone to reply, that really does help them see it as like something this person wanted to sign up for. So if you could just ask, hey, reply, what I say is like reply and let me know where you found the newsletter, or say, hi, Chenell. And people can
Yeah.
just like copy that because my name's hard to spell. So they could just like copy and paste it, which is what most people do. But the benefit of the other part is like asking people where they found the newsletter. It's helped me a lot in being able to go thank the people who sent other folks, because I don't always know like where people are coming from.
Hmm.
So like there's not good tracking if someone shouts me out in their newsletter and they don't link to it correctly with like UTM parameters or anything.
Right.
Like I won't know where those people came from. So it's pretty cool to have that come through as just like bonus material for me to see where people are showing up from.
That is cool. I think you could even combine these two strategies of the surprise and delight and get reply and say, please reply, copy this text and hit reply, and then I'll send you, the surprise gift.
Mhm.
So that could be one strategy that you could use too. Do you want to talk about what Nathan does for his invite only newsletter? I think that's interesting. I hadn't heard of this before.
Yeah. So Nathan from Feed Media, he's a friend I met at the newsletter conference last year. He actually has invite only newsletter. So his whole thing is he's running an agency helping people with paid ads for newsletters. And so he doesn't need, 15, 20,000, 50,000 subscribers. Like he just wants a very curated list.
Hmm.
And so he actually seeks out the people he wants to read his newsletter. And so I remember he invited me the one time. Actually, I think it was after we jumped on a call after meeting at the conference, and he invited me to his newsletter. And I was like, oh, well, this is cool. And then at the very top, he like says like, hey, welcome to so-and-so from, Growth in Reverse or whatnot, because he's only adding a couple people every week, as far as I
Yeah,
know. But yeah, it just
that's
makes
cool.
people feel special.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like a different way to do business. And his newsletter is very good. It's like high signal in a way because
Hmm.
he's sharing
Hmm.
like how his client work's going and that kind of thing. So
That's cool. It's very, very like scarcity, like VIP line sort of
yeah,
approach to a newsletter, which most people like begging people to come join the newsletters. And he's kind of like, nah, I've got this newsletter that's kind of a secret that it's like invite only. So,
yep.
I mean, there's some reverse psychology going on there that people could use for their own newsletters too. I've heard the idea of people like basically capping a newsletter. I'm only going to have X amount of subscribers and using that as like a scarcity tactic to get people to subscribe to. So, very limiting in
Yeah,
some ways, but an interesting concept to at least think through.
definitely.
Nice.
The other thing that could be cool to include in a welcome email, I actually put together a whole carousel on LinkedIn about this recently, but
Mm,
Jay Klaus includes a welcome video, which I really enjoy. I think that does quite well for people because you've either probably found him on the podcast or his YouTube channel. And if not, you're like getting that first trust touch point with him, which
yeah.
is really interesting. So I think that's another thing you can set up once and people will get that like warm, fuzzy feeling every time they subscribe to your newsletter.
And obviously, you can't play an email, a video in email. So must be showing like a thumbnail with a play button, so encourages you to click through to where it's hosted.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. And it's not personalized for every new subscriber, of course, but
Oh
it's a
no.
general like, thank you so much for subscribing and what to expect kind of thing. It's kind of like a welcome email video. Well, like obviously that's
Yep.
what it is, but like the video is basically like everything you would hear in a welcome email, but like to you, more personal. You're seeing the person's face. It's just that builds the trust, right?
I know we're still like going hard on this welcome email thing, but one other thing I did want to mention, I do in my newsletter, I call out like, hey, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, go like, please feel free. And I get a
Hmm.
lot of connections on LinkedIn of people saying like, hey, I just subscribed to the newsletter, just wanted to connect. And I think that's a cool way to kind of stay in touch with your audience.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it has the benefit of like growing your follower count if you care that much, but also like you're getting people who obviously enjoy your content, like they subscribed, and now they're following you on social media too, which is going to help with engagement there and building trust with that person as well.
Yeah, I think even just that invitation to connect, with LinkedIn, you can follow somebody, you can connect with them. It's almost like, becoming friends on Facebook back in the day where you had to like get approved to become someone's friend. It kind
Yeah,
of sends, I don't know, so definitely some feel good vibes there when somebody's invited you to connect and you're connecting with author of a newsletter like yours. So I think that could go a long way too. So one thing that I've seen people maybe make the mistake of doing, and that I've unsubscribed to many newsletters because I just simply don't remember subscribing to them like ever, or they haven't sent me a newsletter in a long time, and I just don't know where it came from. So one thing I started doing is adding basically a what I'm calling a context block to the beginning of my newsletter, so that people are like, why am I getting this email? And so I just send them this quick reminder, like, you may have signed up on my homepage or with one of my free resources, or you maybe were referred here by a friend's newsletter. If not, then just feel free to unsubscribe at the bottom. So it's just like kind of calling out the elephant in the room, like, hey, I'm in your inbox and you may not know why. And especially in this
yeah,
day and age of so many different ways that people can be signed up to a newsletter. Like I said, with recommendations, referrals, lead magnets, all that kind of thing. I think it's pretty important, and probably more important than ever, to make sure people know how they got on your list and why they're there, and then also giving them the option to not be, because nobody likes a cold subscriber. And I think it's important to just call that out right at the beginning.
totally.
Hmm.
I think that's a big missed opportunity for quite a few people who are leveraging recommendations or Beehive boosts or those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And you're not kind of saying like where these people came from. I think that's a big miss if you're not doing that. I've
Yeah.
found just personally, like people who come through recommendations aren't always the highest quality. So I end up unsubscribing a lot of them. However, if you don't tell them like where they came from, maybe they don't remember and then they end up unsubscribing or just not opening your emails. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good reminder.
Yeah. And it'll
Yeah.
it'll save you a lot of headache in the down the road. Like you mentioned, having to unsubscribe people yourself or who knows what. So yeah, I think it's good. I think
Yeah.
it's a low lift thing that you can do.
Okay, this one was something that I actually really wanted to do in the early days of Growth in Reverse, and I didn't do it.
Okay.
So feel free to steal this for whoever's listening. Send out a custom video to each subscriber. So, in the early days, you might be getting 1, 2, 3 subscribers a day. How much time would it take you to record a quick Loom video and say like, "Hey, Dylan, I saw you subscribed. Really appreciate it. Maybe you can go check out their LinkedIn profile, like sneak around, like figure out some cool things about them and say like, I saw that you write this newsletter. I saw that you do this. Really excited to have you on the list
Yeah.
or something. You don't even have to go that far with it. But I think getting an actual custom video like that is going to go so far in terms of building trust.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's huge. I think that's huge. That's kind of like we talked to Justin more recently, and how he was like DMing people when they'd subscribed, and he'd like,
Yes.
if they didn't have if their name wasn't in their bio, he'd like go snoop their YouTube or Instagram and find out where they shared their name, so he could like make sure he included that. I think just going that extra step really built a long runway of trust for him with his subscribers. And I think it's like those things that, yeah, it's not scalable, but I think those things do actually scale in the long run. You're going to have way more people invested. You're probably going to get that 1,000 true fans number a lot faster if you're doing that than if you're just trying to kind of take this shotgun approach of just getting as many subscribers as you can from every direction and sending them all just the same welcome email. Yeah, that works. But I think this way, especially if you're selling a product or service, this way is going to get you further ahead in the long run.
Yeah, I wish I would have done this, but things took off a little too quick for me and I never actually implemented it. And so here we are.
There's a humble brag if you've ever heard one. Eh? I just got too
Yeah,
many subscribers. I didn't have
I
time.
know. That's so bad. It sounds so
Champagne
bad.
problems.
Maybe I
But
could go back and do this like once a day, like
yeah,
pick one subscriber. Actually, that could be fun.
that
Maybe
could
I
be
will
fun.
do that. Well, if you're listening to the podcast and you haven't subscribed, go subscribe and maybe you'll get a custom video
You
from me.
you should pick one person this upcoming week who subscribes after we publish this. That'd be great.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to set a reminder to do that.
There you go. One other thing, last thing, I think this is the last one we'll touch on because we've been going on this for a while. These are very important, though. That's why I think we wanted to really focus on this.
Yeah.
The 4-hour email, which Jason Resnick, who came into the Growth in Reverse Pro community, talking to us all about a lot of this onboarding stuff that we've been discussing, and then also like automations and stuff. He does a 4-hour email, which is like a automated email when somebody basically subscribes to your newsletter through like a lead magnet or a free resource.
Mm-hmm.
And if they haven't clicked to download that free resource from the initial email that comes out, he sends an email 4 hours later, just basically reminding people, you haven't downloaded your resource yet. Just reminding you to do that. And so I created a lead magnet shortly after he came into the community to share that with us. And I added that 4-hour email. And sure enough, it's like every time it went out, I think it was like 9 out of 10 people clicked through and downloaded the resource. So I think that would be, it's like low-hanging fruit, and people are always busy. They don't necessarily always get it the first time. And I think just a friendly reminder to make sure they get your free resource is something most people would appreciate.
And what you said, like 90% of the people clicked that second email?
Yeah, it was around there. It was almost every single, I was pretty surprised, like for the people that didn't click the first time, got that email. The open rate was super high and just about everybody clicked through. I'll have to double check the metrics on it, but I was kind of like anticipating, this will just, if they didn't download it the first time, they'll ignore this. Didn't seem to be the case at all.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I need to try this out.
Yeah, it's a good one, especially with the growth levers library that you have as your kind of your main lead magnet. I think there's a good opportunity for people or for you to remind people that they have access to this, or even like a week later, hey, how's the growth levers library treating you? Or do you have any questions? Or just spur some engagement that way too. Could be an interesting strategy as well.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to some growth stuff.
Let's do it.
I feel like we've been on onboarding for a very long time. So
yeah,
let's move on to something new. So growth things that you can kind of set up, not necessarily forget, but for the most part, you could set it up once and it'll keep running for you. First one is a referral program. I know a lot of people I don't know, I hear pros and cons to this, but I think a referral program is a great way to kind of set something up, have it running in the background. Maybe it gets you some incremental subscribers over time. And you don't really have to think about it going forward a ton. Maybe every couple months you change the rewards or something. But I think for the most part, this is like a really good way to kind of get those extra subscribers without doing much more work.
I think you showcased one from Ali Abuleta, I believe it was, for First 1000.
Yeah.
He had an interesting, more unique referral program, which included like shoutouts in his newsletter if you recommended, or shoutouts basically to your product or your website in like a custom section in his newsletter if you recommended 5 or 10 people. He had some other really interesting ways to do it. So it's like not just a referral program, but something that's a little bit different. That doesn't necessarily cost you money or too much time, but that would encourage people to actually refer your newsletter.
I think it's a good way to kind of get those incremental subscribers. Okay, so this next one, people are probably going to yell at their screen or phone, but cross promotions, I think, yes, they are work. However, a friend named David Alikwu, he runs a newsletter called The Knowledge, and he had a cross promotion set up that made my jaw drop when I saw it. It was an email. It was a dedicated email. He said, "Hey, love the newsletter." It was actually like a good cold email. Do you want to do a cross promotion?
He didn't say it pissed you off or anything like that, or it pissed him off?
No.
No. Okay.
No. And so he has an email that goes out and says hey, I want to do a cross promotion. Here's a little bit about my newsletter. I have 20,000 subscribers or whatever the number was. And then he links off to a form that essentially captures everything he would need for that. Mm-hmm. And then also, I think he just assigns the date on the back end for when you're doing the cross promotion. So it was your name, your newsletter, the link you want to include, the full blurb that you want, anything else, if there was an image in the newsletter. It was just so set up that you didn't even have to really engage with each other as much. There was no back and forth emails or anything like that. So I think if you can get a process like that set up and just maybe you do 1 or 2 cross promotions a month, I think that could be another way to just get some more subscribers without a ton of work.
I did I think for my 1KS roadmap, I believe I created a template for basically, I can't remember exactly what I called it. This is great podcast material right now, but it
Oh yeah.
essentially was like a setup form where it's like, how you could basically exchange your cross promotion details, like either in a doc or on a form. I can't remember what it was, but it was this idea like cross promotions take time because there's back and forth and all this stuff. But it's like, hey, we both agree we want to do a cross promo. Like here's the link to a form. Fill out your details there, and it was
Yep.
it I just asked basic questions like your the link that you wanted to share, the details about your newsletter, the name, etc. So that you can definitely automate some of this process and make it a lot smoother and less of a lift for you than the tediousness of going back and forth on email.
Totally. So if there's any way to like just systematize it even more, go for
Yep.
it. I think that's a good way.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's not completely hands off, but for the most part. Recommendations, we kind of just touched on with the welcome email getting sent afterwards. But again, recommendations can be a great way to get some extra subscribers. I know people love them, they hate them, but I think if you do it well and you're promoting and like recommending other people who actually have good content and are in like they have similar audiences, I think it could be beneficial.
So here's a hot tip for anyone listening who is on Kit, for example, Boost. I'm sure in Beehive you could probably do this as well. Find people who you want to just cross promote with. Reach out to a few people, like basically do free cross promotions with these people. I think that is going to be the one of the best ways that you can leverage these pop-up widgets, these recommendations widgets. If you can find somebody who is very much aligned with your content, your niche, not necessarily competition, but complementary. I think that is kind of the best way to do this because you can really drive a lot of subscribers to each other, and these can be valuable subscribers. So I'm not going to give examples of who I'm doing this with, but I've found this to be a really successful way to drive new subscribers and then send people basically subscribers their way as well. So find people, cross promote, basically use the recommendations widget as like a cross promotions tool.
Yep. And then if the cross promotion does well and you're seeing good subscribers come from it, why not see if you can set up a recommendation swap with that person? It's almost like a test, right? Like
True.
test the
True.
waters before you actually like dive in and swap recommendations. I think that could be cool. Yeah.
There's one other kind of cool thing I saw Nathan Barry from Kit, I almost said ConvertKit, sharing. If you go into the creator recommendations, creator network section, you can scroll down and actually see who, I believe it's like who you have the most overlap with for subscribers or similar audiences. Also, who's like who subscribed to your newsletter, who's in like the Kit creator network. And so like these are just a bunch of different ways that they're kind of like unearthing some of these connections that you didn't realize existed. So go check those out. I think that a really good opportunity to reach out to some people who are maybe subscribed to your newsletter that you didn't know and create some of these collaborations with.
Awesome. Love it.
All right, should we talk revenue?
Yeah, let's jump into revenue.
How do we make easy money?
Tell me, please.
Yes, exactly. I got one example. It's not necessarily easy money, but one way you could, if you're struggling with sponsorships, I think I've seen this. A few people do this a few times, and that's basically offering super cheap sponsor slots. Like, let's say a couple thousand subscribers, and you're trying to sell $250 sponsorship slots in your newsletter. It could be a tough sell. What you could do instead of trying to get a really high number for these spots is basically just say, I'm going to blow these out at say $50. So almost 75, I'm not going to do public math, but 75% say reduction on your price, 75% off sponsor slots. You could put a limit on how many you're doing, but basically blow through some inventory that you want to get rid of. And a few things this does is obviously it lowers the barrier to entry for people who want to advertise. It's a little bit more enticing. There's lower risk on the advertiser's part. It also lowers pressure on you to like make sure that you get the ROI for your advertiser. Of course, you want people to click through and you still don't want to, slack off on the promotion of it or the copywriting, but it just lowers that pressure a little bit on the performance. You get better at sales. You fill out your inventory, all these things happen. You get better at copywriting because you're having to write more ads. It's a forcing function for you to publish. So there's a lot of reasons why just getting more sponsored slots in your newsletter, even if you're not making money hand over fist with them, a good thing. And then from there, if you're getting good results for advertisers and you can start increasing the prices, and they're like, well, I advertised, got good results, prices going up, I get it. yeah, it's not gonna they might not be convinced that easily, but it's an opportunity for you to slowly start increasing prices and sharing. I mean, you've got all these metrics now that you wouldn't have had otherwise if you're trying to sell a way too high flat rate for your sponsor slots.
Yeah, I think this could be good, but I hesitate. I don't know. I feel like if you start super low, it's going to be really hard to increase the price. So maybe there's like a yes, cheap, but not super cheap. I don't know.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I do think there is something to be said about filling out inventory and getting momentum. I did this in the early days too, of like,
Hmm.
okay, sold out 4, and then I raised my price, and I was like, hey, they're booked out until March or whatever the time frame was.
Yeah.
And it was like 1 or 2 months out. And so I think that just kind of shows advertisers like, whoa, there's demand. Like I should maybe jump on this if I want to test it out. So
Hmm.
I think there is something to that aspect of it. But yeah, don't tell Justin more about these cheap spots.
No, 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 he'll strangle you.
Yeah,
I think the part of the thing I like about this is, especially somebody who's never run ads in their newsletter or have a smaller audience. Basically, what they do is they'll validate that they can actually earn revenue from sponsorships, and then they can set a benchmark as to how many clicks they're getting on an ad and how well the ad's converting. Maybe
totally.
testing out different areas in the newsletter that they can do it, and it's kind of a low risk test too because you're not charging an arm and a leg for this sponsorship. So I like the idea of somebody who's just starting out and who's growing their list, wants to see some of that momentum and validate the idea of having a sponsorship in your newsletter and whether or not it could actually work with your audience. I think this is a really low lift, easier way to do it, lower pressure on you and on the advertiser as well.
Yeah. And so what Dylan's saying there, just to clarify, is that like, so if you have a super cheap sponsorship or 2 or 3, then you can say, okay, my audience clicked through on each one of these like 50 times. So then for future sponsors, you can go to them and be like,
Hmm.
okay, the average ad click rate is, 2% or 3% or whatever that
Yeah.
is. You can expect to get around 50 clicks. And that kind of helps the advertiser take some pressure off because they know what they're paying for and what the average quote unquote response might be.
And
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what you sold that ad for, like the clicks relay that, right? So um you've set yourself a benchmark now for what a spot like that will get for clicks. Technically you
nice.
could do this with any link, like you could have your own makeshift ad if you wanted
Yeah,
to and test it that way if you don't even have a sponsor, and then you could go to a sponsor and say, hey, I had this sort of featured slot, and this is the how many clicks it drove, et cetera, et cetera. So there's
yeah.
definitely different ways to do this too.
I think the other thing that could be interesting for people for revenue is like setting up a survey for subscribers.
Hmm.
So then when you go to sponsors in the future, you have some data as well. And you're not just saying, hey, it's 50 clicks. It's 50 clicks from people who live in the US and Canada, or, they work at these places, et cetera. And then you have
Hmm.
more data for the sponsor to be like, oh, these are actually my target audience folks. Let me go ahead and subscribe or buy more of those. So
This is, well, I mean,
yeah.
this is huge, right? Like I mentioned Justin Moore earlier, and I'll mention him again because he was just on the podcast. If you haven't listened to that episode, please go check it out because it's so good. But Justin basically was like, you need to tell advertisers who is in your audience when you're making your pitch, but you have to back up a little bit because if you don't know who's in your audience, you can't make that pitch. So a questionnaire, a survey, finding out who is in your audience, who they are, what they do, even if you can get like their household income, details like that are going to be more valuable to advertisers. And then also like the psychographics of where they are in a particular journey, what problems they're facing, what challenges they're having in their business. All those things are going to be important too. And Justin gave us a great example of, like an accounting software. You didn't realize that your small to medium sized business operator that was in your audience was having troubles with accounting software. And now you've got a pitch for, an accounting product that you could pitch a brand on. So those are just things that you don't need to know to sell sponsorship, but they're definitely going to help you sell your sponsorships and potentially get more for them.
And so you can even set up something like a Google Doc to collect some data from people. You
Hmm.
can use a tool like Write Message if you have the budget for it. It's a great option. Connects directly with your email service provider. But
Yeah.
again, like a Google Doc is just as good in the beginning as
When
well.
do you mean Google Form?
Google Form. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Google Doc could work as well, but Google Form would
Might
work
be a
a
little
little better.
messy.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, let's do you have anything else on revenue?
I don't think so. I feel like that could be a whole episode in itself. So let's
Yeah.
keep it there for now, and
Okay.
we'll move back to that in a
Okay.
future one.
Okay, retention and engagement. How do we get people
Ooh.
to, what can we do? Little things we can do to get people to both open our emails and stay on our email lists.
I know this one you have in here for subject line, and I'm like, yes, but also like, so subject lines are definitely important, especially in the early days of your newsletter when
Hmm.
people are still deciding whether or not they enjoy your newsletter, if they want to trust what you're writing about. I think they could have a big impact. We've mentioned this before on the podcast, but when I always run, not when I always run, when I run subject line tests, like oftentimes it doesn't have a huge impact. And I know people like Ann Hanley say that the send from name is actually more important.
Hmm.
People are more likely to open it because it's you versus what the subject line says. But I do think there is something to a good subject line, at least getting it past the point of like going from bad to good.
Yes. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of things you can do with subject lines. And I agree with Anne and you. Like, once you've built up the credibility and the trust in your reader's eyes, it kind of doesn't matter what your subject line is. To some degree, they know that it's coming from somebody who's publishing great content that they enjoy, that they get value from. So, to some degree, that subject line can be not moot, but not have as big of an impact. That being said, though, you're constantly adding people to your newsletter, hopefully.
Mhm.
New people are coming on all the time. You might not have built up that trust and relationship and rapport and credibility with them. So I think you do still need to really consider what a new subscriber want to open rather than somebody who's been subscribed to your newsletter for 2 years and who opens every edition, right? So I think keeping that in the back of your mind when you're putting together your subject lines is pretty valuable. So you don't want to just kind of necessarily spend all
Wing
this
it.
time, spend all this time that you put into, like you, Chanel, putting hours and hours and hours into research and publishing, writing a deep dive, and then being like, the first thing that comes to your mind, yeah, that's a good enough subject line. You wouldn't want to, if you spent a little bit more time in thinking through the subject line and it gets like 15% better open rate because of it, you'd probably kick yourself. So there's a few tools you can use to even analyze your subject lines. There's cheap ChatGPT bots that you can use. There's different websites. We can maybe share some of those in the show notes. But the
Sure.
point is, like, don't just publish the first subject line that comes to your. It might be the best. The first one might be the best, but give it more than like 1 second of thought. Is, I guess, my point.
Yeah. And even I say that testing them isn't great. However, I don't usually wing it either. So
Yeah.
I'll try and write like 5 or 10, like just really quickly off the top
Hmm.
of my head, even if I'm
Hmm.
in like a pinch, typically publish like right before I send out the email. Um, so I don't often have a ton of time for this, which is probably not the best strategy, but I will try and like quickly write out like 5 or 10 different angles that this piece could take or the newsletter could take, and then I'll
Yeah.
just kind of pick which one sounds the best and run with it.
Nice. I like it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's something that definitely can, I think, a small change that can have a big impact. So it
there you go.
definitely fits
Bringing it full
into
circle
the
here.
subject. Yes, exactly. I got just a couple more here for retention. One thing that I think can be, I guess, interesting. I don't see a lot of people doing it. It's kind of like we've talked about surprise and delight earlier when we were talking about
Mhm.
onboarding, but doing it in like anniversary stages of your newsletter. So like if somebody's been subscribed for 14 days or 30 days or a few months, you can send them an email with a discount code, a free trial on something, maybe like a free call if you wanted to offer that up. I know Josh Spector offers a free skill session course to subscribers when they've been subscribed for 30 days. At least he used to. I'm not sure if he still does, but I got that email from him. And so really what that does is that's kind of like a version of a free trial because he offers his skill sessions. You can basically have to buy them in a year's pack or a year's yearly subscription. So he's kind of teasing you with a free version. And then if you find value in it, you might opt into the whole thing. So stuff like that, I think, is a really interesting way to kind of keep people's engagement and kind of, again, give a little bit more value than you're taking from them.
Totally. I think that's a great way to also show like the people who have been on your list for a while, like, hey, there's benefit in subscribing and
Hmm.
sticking around.
Hmm.
So I like that.
I think it's
Yeah.
there's tons of different ways you could do it. Even just sending them like a fun gift saying, "Hey, thanks for sticking around for, a month. Hope you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
Let me know what your thoughts are." Something like that. You can have fun with it. It doesn't have to be necessarily you're giving them something away, but just acknowledging it and personalizing it a bit could be fun.
Good one. Just some bonus tips. Like we've gone through a couple examples from deep dives and other creators just doing cool stuff. Um, but I think if you can just like take the research mindset and be like, okay, how can I get better at welcome emails? Go sign up for 10 of your favorite creators' emails, see what they're doing, take pieces from what you enjoy, leave out what you don't, and kind of create your own little research doc around these different elements. I think that can have a huge impact. Like you and I look at this stuff all day, but we'll still find new exciting examples all the time. So
Hmm.
I think if you can kind of take the ones you like, make it your own, and kind of build off that, there's like a big benefit to doing that, whether it's subject lines, welcome sequences, even if you sign up for people through recommendations, like sign up for a newsletter, get the recommendation pop up, subscribe to all of those so that you
Yep.
get their their subscriber email for that. I think there's something to be said about just having this curiosity and like going to figure it out on your own and making it your own customized onboarding and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So
I think that's a good tip too, and I haven't really thought of it this way before. So you just kind of shine a light on this. People who are paying for you to subscribe to their emails via these recommendation widgets, chances are they probably put a little bit of thought into how they are going to onboard you and how that experience is going to go. So even just as a research, it's tempting to just toggle maybe later or turn all those off and not subscribe to any of them. But I'm not saying do it every time, but try it a couple times where you subscribe to all those newsletters and see what they're doing. And um, I know that has highlighted a few things for me in the past. This context block that I talked about, I got that idea from a newsletter that I opted into via a recommendations widget, and I was like, "Why isn't everybody doing this?" It was as simple as being like, "Hey, thanks for subscribing. You were referred here by such and such," and I'm like, "Yes, that is so obvious. That's what more people should do." I think that's a great tip. Is people who are paying to get you onto their email list probably have thought this through, maybe a little bit hopefully a little bit more thoroughly than others. So I think that's actually a really sound tip.
I mean, you think about it, they're paying, they're probably getting some free consulting from the platform they're paying through, whether it's Sparkloop or
Yeah.
Beehive Boost. I'm sure they have best practices that they're sharing with those folks. So you can kind of get some inside baseball just by subscribing to those paid recommendations and seeing
Hmm.
what's going on in
Hmm.
the back end. So I don't want to annoy all the people who are paying for email subscribers of getting these people on there, but I think that's a really good way to do that.
Yeah, it is. One other thing like you could consider is just subscribing to big-ish or bigger newsletters and see what they're doing because they've got a lot more at stake when they've got a massive email list and just see kind of what kinds of things they're doing. So like James Clear is an example. You've deep dive like the Gist and TLDR and a bunch of these
Mhm.
newsletters that have over 1 million subscribers. Check them out, see what they're doing, and that you might get some ideas on sort of what to do in your onboarding and in the inbox experience as well from them.
Totally. I've been doing a kind of a deep dive into different sponsorship stuff because we're planning on having February be like sponsor month within
Yes.
the Growth and Reverse Pro community. So I've been going through and just like going hard on research of like best practices, different types of sponsorships, like where are people actually putting sponsorships. Like I found
Mm,
some in welcome emails and like
yep.
onboarding surveys. And so I'm just trying to compile all of these like and even finding like a bunch of media kits to build a swipe file out for the community. Like it's just fascinating, like all of the stuff that's hiding in plain sight. When you actually take the time to focus on that one thing, you start seeing all these other little things pop up and you're like, oh, that's so smart how they're doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm excited to kind of keep doing that and share more. But
Yeah. I think it's going to be a really exciting month for, I guess when people are hearing this, it's already going to be February, but we'll be
yeah,
going hard into sponsorships and kind of like ad revenue for the month and having some great guests come in too. So really excited to be part of the Growth Inverse Pro community. Let's call it GIR Pro. GIR Pro.
yeah, there you go. Just
And
flows right off the tongue,
yeah,
doesn't it?
exactly. Yeah, no, I think it's gonna
Yeah.
be fun. It's gonna be a great month.
I'm excited. Starting to like almost put together a whole little mini course inside there with all the stuff I'm finding. So
Ooh.
I'm excited to see what that looks like. Yeah, spoiler. So yeah, that's fun. But I think just the focused research is really like the takeaway here is like
Yeah.
you and I can talk about this stuff all day, but
Hmm.
go find what you enjoy and what feels right for your brand. And I think that's going to have a big impact. Yeah, I mean, if you want to check out Growth and Reverse Pro, you can go to growthandreverse.com/pro. And who knows, maybe we'll have a little 30-minute call if you sign up.
Oh, call with
Ooh,
Chenell.
that'd be
There's
fun.
sold right there. I'm in.
There you go.
Awesome.
Awesome. This was fun. I'm excited that Jake sent us this idea. So if you have
Yeah.
thoughts or ideas on future episodes and you want to potentially get your newsletter shouted out on air, let us know. Feel
Hmm.
free to DM me on LinkedIn or send me an email, Chenell@growthandreverse.com. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great place to do it.
Yeah, we'll definitely be taking more of these questions in the future and using them for new or podcast, potentially even newsletter content. So yeah, don't be shy.